Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2023 Annual Meeting of the Hollis School District. My name is Drew Mason, and I am the District Moderator. I call this meeting to order. I invite all who are able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was trying to arrange a live performance by students from the elementary school, but I was unable to complete that. But I have a copy of the national anthem played by the Hughes Band from 2019. I invite all serving members of our armed forces and all veterans to stand and be recognized. We thank you for your service. I invite School Board Chair Amy Kellner to introduce the members of the school board.
Testing? Yes. Good evening and welcome to the 2023 Hollis School District Annual Meeting. Thank you for coming. My name is Amy Kellner and I'm the chair of the Hollis School Board. To my right is Carol Roy, vice chair. Seated behind her is Tammy Fareed, secretary, Brooke Arthur, and Rob Mann. I wanted to take a minute to thank Rob Mann and Brooke Arthur for their service and contributions to the school district over the years as they did not seek re-election. Thank you.
I invite Budget Committee Chair Tom Geehan to introduce the members of the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We are joined by the BudCom and the school district clerk, Diane Levitt, Darlene Mann, Mike Harris, Chris Hyde, Chris Ledoux, who is the select board representative to the BudCom.
Mark Ledoux.
What's that?
Mark Ledoux.
What did I say?
Chris.
I get this wrong every year. I've been doing this with these guys for 15 years now. Now I'm off my game. Lauren Ridstrom and Mike Levitt and Amy Kellner is the ex officio member from the school board. Thank you.
I invite School Superintendent Andy Corey to introduce the SAU 41 schools and school staff.
Thank you all for coming tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce Gina Bergskog, Assistant Superintendent, Lauren G. Gennaro, Director of Student Services, Kelly Seeley, Business Administrator, Donna Smith, Assistant Business Administrator, and Carol Tyler, Director of Technology. Paula Rispicki is the principal of Hollis Primary School. Candy Fowler is the principal of Hughes. Ann Elser is the special education coordinator for the district. And Abby Diaz is in charge of curriculum and instruction for the Hollis School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Helping us tonight is District Clerk Diane Levitt and District Counsel James O'Shaughnessy. We have ballot clerks and supervisors of the checklist along the back wall, and I have assistants and volunteer counters over in the corners. This building and this meeting are mask optional. I ask that members be thoughtful and considerate of others who might have different views about masking. The fire department would like to remind you that this room has 4 sets of emergency exits, 2 in the back and 2 up there. Please do not block the exits. The video of this meeting is being live broadcast. It's on sau41.org, and right there on the front page, you can click on live stream. Also on sau41.org, you can find a copy of the meeting warrant, which is also posted in the back of the room, a copy of the proposed budget, and a copy of this presentation. The meeting calendar, we're about halfway through. Town meeting will be this Saturday at 9 a.m., that's a mistake, at the gym right here. And local election has been postponed until Tuesday, March 28th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the Lawrence Barn. We are here tonight to discuss and act on the subjects brought forward on the warrant by your school board. To do so effectively, we need rules which provide order and structure to the business of the meeting. Rules must be set for each meeting so folks understand how to get things done. I will propose a set of rules and then ask the voters to adopt them. Once adopted, it takes a 2/3 vote to change them. As a reminder, Robert's Rules is only a guide. They do not control how this meeting is run. You can find a copy of my rules in the Hollis Town Report in the yellow section on page 225. In the next few slides, I will touch on just a few points. If you wish to speak, come up to the microphone and show your voting card. Please wait to be recognized by the moderator. This gym is not designed as a meeting hall, so it's sometimes difficult to hear. Announce your name and address clearly so the clerk can hear it. You may speak only once until all other first-time speakers have a chance. Your time is limited to 2 minutes and cannot be yielded or transferred. Sponsors of amendments can have 5 minutes. When you get close to your time limit, I will give you a signal. When you're out of time, I will give you a second signal. Be germane, and if possible, be brief. Avoid repeating points that have already been made. Above all, be courteous. It is possible to disagree without being disagreeable. Disruptive behavior or personal attacks are out of line, out of bounds, and out of order. To clarify, speaking without being recognized or failing to stop when your time has run out is disruptive behavior. The moderator is responsible for keeping the meeting on track and maintaining order. If things got out of hand, the moderator has various tools to work with. The purpose of a point of order is to bring to the moderator's attention that the meeting rules are not being followed. If you raise a point of order, please be clear about which rule or rules are not being followed. The motion can also be used to appeal a ruling of the moderator. It cannot be used to ask a question or to make a motion. Those can only be done when the voter has the floor. Over the past few meetings, I have been trying different approaches to how we end debate. Listening to feedback from voters, this is my proposal for this meeting. A motion to end debate may be made after waiting for your turn in line, or the motion may be made directly from the floor if no other speaker has the floor. It may not be made after the voter makes a speech, and I will not accept it if there has not been sufficient debate. For example, the first speaker after discussion is opened should not try and end debate. The motion is not debatable and requires a 2/3 vote to pass. In any case, all voters already in line may speak. A motion to reconsider is useful and appropriate if new information comes to light or spending approaches the 10% rule limit. It allows the voters to discuss a matter further and vote again. The motion can only be made by a person who voted on the prevailing side. It is debatable and requires a simple majority to pass. A motion to restrict reconsideration does not block reconsideration of a previous motion or article. If passed, it requires that any subsequent reconsideration of the vote cannot occur for at least 7 days. The motion can be applied to any previously completed and declared vote. The motion is not debatable and is in order any time the voter has the floor. My copy of Robert's Rules is more than an inch thick. It is simply not possible in a few pages or a few slides to take into account all of the possible motions and situations that can occur. The moderator has the responsibility for making rulings on such matters as things come up. However, this is your meeting. State law gives the voters at the meeting the ability to appeal and overrule any interpretation of the rules that the moderator may make. If you disagree with a ruling, come to the microphone and raise a point of order, being clear what you are appealing. A second is required. This meeting then has the opportunity to vote on the ruling. If the ruling is a direct application of one of the meeting rules, you need to suspend or change the rules rather than make an appeal. So, shall the school district vote to adopt the rules for this meeting as proposed by the moderator?
Jim Belanger, Plain Road, Hollis. I move that this assembly adopts the moderator's rules.
Moved by Mr. Belanger, seconded by Mr. Harris. Is there any discussion of the rules? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the rules, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? And the ayes have it. We have 7 items on the warrant, plus any other business at number 8. Article 1 is a contract between the Hollis School District and the support staff union. Article 2 is the SAU budget assessment. This one will be done by secret ballot, and the results will be combined with the results last week from the co-op and from the Brookline School District, which is an SB2 town. So we won't know the status of this article for another couple of weeks. Item 3 is the SAU Building Maintenance Fund. Article 4 is the School Building Maintenance Fund. Article 5 is the Special Education Trust Fund. Article 6 is the Contingency Fund. And Article 7 is the operating budget. At this time, I invite Budget Committee Chair Tom Guillen.
Well, hopefully I do a better job with this than I did with the introductions. Before we get into the tax rate projection, just want to make a point that the tax rate is really only part of the equation. You know, we vote for how much we want to spend in each of our taxing entities here at the Hollis School District, the co-op the other night, and this Saturday at the town meeting. The other piece is revenue and aid in the case of the school district. And the point of this slide is part of the increase in the tax rate, a substantial part, almost half, was due to decreases in revenue. So what happens, the school district has the ability to retain some of the unexpended budget money that didn't get spent or excess revenue, but that's limited, and the rest of it rolls back in the following year and is recognized as revenue and reduces the tax effort and therefore reduces the tax rate. Well, we had kind of a windfall last year with revenue that wasn't repeated this year. And as I move forward, you'll see that there are a couple other factors that kind of worked against us this past year. All right, I apologize, this is an eye chart. Just to hit some of the high points, the operating budget itself went up about 10%. There are a number of staff increases that I'll talk about when we cover the operating budget Article 7. However, another effect here is an increase in bonded debt service that we approved last year that is kind of coming into full force in the budget, and also the teacher contract. Warrant articles are down about 20%, a little over than 20%, because we don't have a teacher contract this year. Other high points, we really don't have much ability to, well, the revenue right there dropping from 1.8 million to about $770,000. That's what I spoke to on the previous slide. State aid and retained tax, really, we are subject to the activities or the decisions made in Concord. We don't control those. So finally get down about 2/3 of the way down to the total tax effort. Last year was about $11.18 million. This year it's up to 13.27, an increase of almost 20%. That will drive the tax rate up about 16%. The reason it doesn't match is because we anticipate an increase in the tax base, so that tends to dilute the effect of the increased tax rate, or tax effort, rather. We layer on the state tax rate, and overall, we are forecasting an increase of about 19% in the Hollis School District tax rate, the combination of the local tax rate and the state tax rate. All right, so as we all know, when we look at our tax bill every year, you've got different components. The Hollis School District is only one of those, and here I've broken out the other components. You'll see the yellow lines or the yellow numbers are the things that we can control at our various meetings, the annual school district meetings and at the town meeting. In white, as I said earlier, you know, we're subject to Concord and what they want to do. And this assumes that articles are passed as they're presented on the various warrants. However, this is updated to reflect the decisions that were made at the co-op meeting the other night. So you can see the town rate is going up substantially, 23%. I touched on the local tax rate going up about 16% to almost $9. Co-op is anticipated to go up about 11% to just under $8. And all in, the bottom line is the Hollis tax rate is forecast to increase 17% from $22.57 to $26.37. Keep in mind that this year is a revaluation year, so we anticipate a rather substantial increase in the tax base, which will result in a lower rate. So these are almost certainly overstated, but we've got a good idea of what the tax effort across all the two districts and the town will be. And I believe that's it for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Article 1, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items included in the 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hollis School Board and the Hollis Education Support Staff Association for the 2023 to 24 school year, which calls for the following increases in support staff salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. For fiscal year 2023 to 24, $89,225, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $89,225 for the second year, 2023 to 24 school year, such sum representing the negotiated increase over the 2022-23 salaries and fringe benefits. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends this appropriation 800. Estimated net tax impact 5 cents a thousand. Moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. I should add that because this is a labor contract, it is not amendable. Ms. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In each of the 3 school districts within the SAU, there are 2 employment contracts that are managed. There's a teacher's contract, which here in Hollis is a San Bernard's contract, so we voted on it last year and it stays intact for the 3 years. The other contract is what's called HSD, and that is a non-San Bernard's contract. So while it is a 3-year agreement and we can project what each of those values will be when you make your first vote on it in year 1, you do have to vote on it each year. So that's why you guys are seeing this again. Now, one of the things specifically in this article, let me see, pop us forward, there we go, is that this is an increase from that projected amount that we presented for this coming school year during the meeting last year. This is in response to being able to raise the rates so we can hire the people that we need to fill these positions, as well as retain the folks that are already there. This is something that you heard echoed a little bit during the co-op meeting last week. That is something that all 3 districts are feeling. So folks that are covered in the HSD contract, just in case we're not clear, people like the custodial staff, your secretaries and receptionists, your paraprofessionals, as well as your food service workers, and a few other categories are included in that as well. You'll see the highlights on the screen behind me of how this is changing for FY24 and FY25. There are steps that everybody's on. They have a category and a step, and we have moved folks off step, and that 3.5%, which you'll see on the next slide, was already negotiated as part of the contract as their next increase. There was an increase in the insurance caps allowed. We provided $500 towards insurance premiums for the part-time employees who are not covered with benefits. You can see there the total. That was the previously negotiated amount of $69,256 that was projected last year when we presented the first year. And then our new components are totaled of $19,969 for a grand total for this one for $89,225. You can see that we have projected for FY25 what those impacts will be on the next year's contract, but by voting tonight, you are not committing to the FY25. It will come to a vote at next year's town meeting, or excuse me, district meeting. We got so many meetings this week. So just to outline some of the new components, I kind of just mentioned them going through that chart. We provided retention stipends in FY23, $1,000 or a step 6 equivalent. The new components for FY24, which are that $19,969, all support staff are now off step. There have been some category shifts. We are adopting the co-op on-step grid, the FY24 co-op on-step grid for new hires. It is just keeping us a little bit more consistent with what's happening in SAU 41. And we are going to make some adjustments to the off-step rates due to that new on-step grid, just to make sure nobody's losing out by being on the grid or being brought in too high. And then we also provided a $500 stipend for eligible employees. I invite you to come to the mic if you have any commentary or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Is there any discussion of Article 1?
Good evening, Janet Merrithew, Forest View Drive.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch your name.
Janet Merrithew.
Janet, I got that much.
Yes. Merrithew, Merrithew.
Thank you.
I was at the co-op meeting also with a similar article, I believe. What is the amount, the salary amount, the per hour the same, increase?
Say that one more time, Janet, please.
Is the salary increase for the support staff the same amount as for the co-op?
I don't think, can you confirm that, you guys? It's not, correct? Sorry, I only know as a resident what the co-op does. We don't totally interface with
Right.
them.
So,
for
well,
those.
do you know what that is? What the increase is?
Same table, but not the same increases, they're telling me.
Okay, at co-op, it was $12.59, something like that, to $15. So what is it for the Hollis School District?
Sure. We didn't provide the salary grids because if Tom thought his slide was an eye chart, the salary grids are even more. You can find them online, I believe, but if not, we can certainly circulate those. The proposed salary grid for FY24 and FY25 for us, can you tell me what it goes? Do you have last year's that we can reference? Do you have it? Thanks. I was looking at the wrong one. So the FY23 salary schedule, for instance, a step 1 individual in category 1 was at $12.71.
Okay.
A step 1 category 1 for the FY24 salary schedule is $13.15 an hour. So it's not even $1 of an increase. As an example, I can pick another
Right.
step combination if
that's fine.
you want.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
Sure.
So I could compare.
Yep.
Because when I went to the co-op meeting, and the next morning I woke up and I thought, why did I not speak at that meeting? So at least I can speak here. Because some years ago, I was a substitute and a para in all 4 buildings, from the elementary through the high school. And I found that the people I was working with were extremely well educated. Many of them were extremely well educated, bachelor degrees through PhDs. And they were there primarily, I felt, from what I knew of my colleagues, to help and the students. And they loved to do that. They weren't doing it primarily for the money. And to help the staff also, and they enjoyed working with the students. And I certainly support this because I think that they could go elsewhere and that this is their primary motive. And this would, if we give them that increase, it's showing, I think, an appreciation for the work that they do. Did I have something else to say? I think that's all my notes. So thank you very much. Oh, I have 30 seconds left.
Thanks, Janet.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Fontaine, 42 Ironworks Lane. So one question I had was, what happens if this article doesn't pass? What would be the recourse? Because it's a contract, right? So does the contract have to be renegotiated? Would it come back up in the follow-on meeting? And just for background, I'm asking because it can't be amended, if I recall correctly, and $13 an hour when compared to the $15 at the co-op and competitive rates, I'm considering possibly voting it down to get more money into it than less. And so I wanted to understand what the repercussions of, if it voted down, what would happen.
Sure. Gina, it goes to the... We go back to last year's rates.
Okay.
Thank you for confirming.
And it wouldn't come back up again until the following year?
Correct.
Okay.
It would have to be renegotiated.
Yeah, no, I understood. I had another one, but I forgot, so thank you.
Of course, thank you. And just as a quick note, I gave one example of one category step combination. If there are others that you want to see or discuss, we can kind of talk about that, but that's kind of the lowest one that's available, the change. Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Hi, Lillian Gruba, 28 Winchester Drive. Excuse me. I understand the need for having competitive salaries, but it would be helpful to know the scope of the openings that we're having difficulty filling, that maybe people might be able to understand the need for this. Is there a lot of openings, or are these for salaries that are existing?
Yes, and I think the ones of deepest concern are paraprofessionals. It's really difficult to get those folks in at such low rates. And I think that the other thing to consider is that they don't get benefits in our district because of the number of hours that they work. And they can go to the town next door and get benefits. They can possibly even go to another district nearby and get benefits. And so for us to be able to retain and to attract the people that we know we need here to serve the students in the Hollis School District, we needed to make an adjustment above and beyond what we negotiated last year.
Would you have I know that I work at another school district, and I know we have a great need also for paraprofessionals. Do you have I guess what I'd like to know myself is how many do we really, or do we need now that we don't have yet? Because I know as a classroom teacher, without my paras, I'd be nothing. So, they are truly there to support our children and what their needs are, so.
Absolutely, no, it's a great question. They're gonna peak at we are short 6 right now.
Short 6.
6 paras, food service, and custodians that we are short in the district.
That's exactly what I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, there he is.
Yeah. Jonathan Fontaine.
Yes, sir.
I remember my question.
Yeah.
Can you explain, it was bulleted out that there was a $500 stipend, I think. Can you explain what the stipend was for? Because it didn't really go into much detail.
Sure. So we are legally restricted from doing things like bonuses and stuff like that because of the nature of it. So the way that we can even out some of the folks who, well, let me set the scene. How we got to that point is, say we hired somebody, they were at step 3 because that was appropriate for what they were being hired for and their experience. And then we got into a bind and we needed to hire, and we maybe hired someone at a step above what they normally would have come in at because we really needed to fill that position to serve the kids. And now we end up that we're at a deficit with this other person that we already hired at their step. So what we did is take a look at each individual person. So this wasn't a blanket stipend like, hey, everybody, it doesn't matter when you were hired or how long you've been here. It was very specific to even out across the board some of those discrepancies that happened in our hiring processes. So we're doing the different stipends in FY24 and FY25 in order to even that out.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to bring Article 1 to a vote. If you are in favor of ratifying the support staff contract, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your cards. And the ayes have it. Article 2, shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $677,360 as the Hollis School District's portion of the SAU budget of $2,264,374 for the forthcoming fiscal year. This year's adjusted budget of $2,247,208 with $672,225 assigned to the school budget of this school district will be adopted if the article does not receive a majority vote of all the school district voters voting in this school administrative unit. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends this appropriation 800. As I mentioned, this will be voting by secret ballot and requires a simple majority of all 3 districts. The polls will not be open for an extended period of time. When everyone here has had a chance to vote, we'll close and count. The estimated tax impact is 37 cents a thousand, moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. Ms. Roy.
Hey, I'm back again. All right. So those of you at the co-op meeting, you saw the SAU budget presented there. The SAU budget is divided into the 3 sections for the 3 different participating districts in the SAU. The SAU overall, you can look at it as a $50 million corporation. It has 6 different employment contracts and therefore has a staff that needs to support all of the different buildings. In Hollis, we have 2, co-op has 2, and Brookline has 2 school buildings. So this section of the SAU budget, there's not too much that comes directly from us at all, but we can just kind of walk through this proposed area here. So you can see what the FY23 budget was, the proposed budget. The change is $161,198, and it's about a 7.6% change. You can see what the major budget drivers were. We had board-approved support staff salary adjustments and their associated benefits, and then their budgeted salaries and associated benefits. You can see that those budgeted salaries and benefits are 3.5% annual increases. And just to pop back to that previous line, the board-approved salary adjustments for FY23 were $33,807 spread throughout the SAU staff. And then, let's pop, oh, I think that's it, actually. So this is presenting just our third here. So if we go back to the previous note there, you're going to see that the Hollis School District's portion of this is $677,360, and that is what you're voting on here tonight. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on the SAU budget? Seeing none, I will bring it to a vote. It's a secret ballot. There's a ballot box in each corner, and the polls are now open. Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? Have the ballot clerks have a chance to vote? For the SAU ballot? For the SAU? Who knows? Okay, the polls are now closed. Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $23,970 to be added to the previously established Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund for administrative and associated structures at 4 Lund Lane in Hollis, Tax Map 56, Lot 2. This amount to come from the unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year. This amount represents rental proceeds and unexpended maintenance funds to be received from SAU 41. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends the appropriation 800. Net tax impact is 0. Moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. Ms. Fareed.
If we could have the next slide, please. Hopefully everyone can see that slide. So the background on this fund, as we see every year, is that the Hollis School District owns the property at 4 Lund Lane, the big white farmhouse. We have owned it for a little over 20 years, and it has always been leased to SAU 41, which is a state municipal agency. Hollis School District charges rent for the space, and that rent goes into the general fund. The purpose of this article, as we have had every year, is to place in the expendable trust as a savings account, and we use that fund to carry over monies that we need for long-term facilities projects. Funding is strictly from the SAU 41 rental income. The districts pay rent to the SAU 41, and they pay us the rent through that process to the Hollis School District. Oversight comes from major expenditures which are proposed by the administration. School board evaluates and presents the plan to the budget committee for input. This is in open public session, and school board makes final approval expenditures. So there's significant transparency and oversight over any expenditures of the funds. Next slide, please. And this is the projected expenditures for the coming year. FY24 projected opening balance, the current balance, $75,000. Proposed funding is that $23,970, which is the rental income. The FY24 proposed projects are simply one item, but it's a expensive one, which is why we're not trying to do this through the operating budget. If you drive by the building, you'll see just beyond the parking lot a small portable storage space. That space was rented last year because we've had to convert the tiny conference room, which was the old house kitchen, into 2 offices shared, well, an office shared by 2 people. So there's no longer any space at all inside the offices for conference rooms. We're proposing to add a different unit, remove the current unit and replace it with a larger one that would function both as storage and as conference space. It would not have running water, but it would be powered electricity. And we've done the homework to discern that this is legal and could be would be perfectly fine to do. Sorry. So the ending balance, once that $30,000 would be expended, would be $68,970 in that fund. Any questions?
Any discussion of Article 3? Ms. Opelka.
Chris Opelka. Are we leasing this or are we buying this?
It's a lease.
So how long is the lease for?
Kelly, do you have an idea of the duration of the lease? So we haven't committed to anything. Typically, we would not expend this kind of funding without voter approval ahead of time. So there's been some background research done on what's available and what could work for us, but nothing has been committed to until the vote this evening secures the funding.
So we might have a $30,000+ lease each year if you decide not to buy something. Is that correct?
Would you excuse me, because it's a very good question and I don't know the answer. I believe the superintendent and the business administrator are talking about that detail. You've asked a good question I don't know the answer to.
Mr. Corey.
If the voters were to approve the money, we would be looking at two options. One is a lease and one is a buy. I don't see the potential of buying the unit because I think long-term it doesn't make sense. So that $30,000 would be to buy the unit, which we don't intend to do. The lease price would be less than that, but we want you to give the voters the maximum amount that we would be spending.
So I'm not sure if I understood you. If we bought it, it would be $30,000 too?
If we bought it, it would be $30,000. The lease price of it will be much less because we'll be doing a year-to-year lease, similar to what you would do for a car, but it'll be for a conference room.
Do you have any idea what the lease price would be?
They usually range probably into, I'd say, in this case, probably a $6,000 to $12,000, depending on the size of the unit.
6 to 12. I don't know. I'd be almost inclined to buy it and then sell it when you want to get rid of it.
That's what we will do. Is if the voters approve the money, we would then come back to the school board and go through a public hearing on the issue because we need that to expend the maintenance trust funds, and we would present them with the options and they would choose what they felt was best for the community in the long run.
Okay, so this is just to, it's not even to just have that line item, it's just for...
It's to provide notice for the community.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
I have the vote for, from the SAU budget. For the Hollis School District, yes, 70, no, 20. These will be combined with the results from the co-op last week and the Brookline School District on Election Day. Mr. Butow.
Brandon Butow, Buttonwood Drive. First, I would like to move to restrict reconsideration of Articles 1 and 2.
Motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 1 and 2. Moved by Mr. Butow, second by Mr. Harris. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration of Articles 1 and 2, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your cards. And the ayes have it. Mr. Butow.
So I am in favor of this as a sort of a temporary stopgap, but I'm wondering, having been in the facility and myself and seen what some of the space limitations are, is anybody working on plans? Is there a roadmap for the long-term solution for this, and like involving the barn on the property, or whatever's the right thing to do? Because this is clearly probably not the long-term answer. So I'm just curious. I will vote for this, but I would like to know that there is some forward long-term view.
We had prepared just as the pandemic came up like a tsunami upon us. We had a proposal to bring to the public for a significant renovation of the property, to build out the barn as a conference site, additional offices to make the building really have a great deal more utility, both for the purposes of the SAU, but beyond that, should the SAU no longer rent it, become a public value and asset to the town. The pandemic hit, we voted not to present that proposal to the public because it happened just within the same week. We've lived through the pandemic. In the meantime, things have gotten even more cramped, although the superintendent did give us great news this past week. Finally, after 22 or 3 years, we have removed the bathtub from the upstairs bathroom so that staff in those back 2 offices don't have to walk through each other's offices to either go to the bathroom or leave the building in the event of an emergency in particular. So in that meantime, we have seen the flowering of our preschool program, which is very special, very unique. It has become increasingly popular, not only among the families who use it, but as a model across the state. And the superintendent has spoken in public, both at the Hollis School Board meetings as well as at SAU governing board meetings, about conjectures and ideas he has about other ways to think about the facilities in Hollis, but on behalf of the entire SAU. And I think he's going to work with the board further as the months go by to reconceive what the actual needs are, both of the staff, but also on the school side.
Okay.
Because let me just conclude that the back of the building is a very large field which our students use as recreation. And so there's multiple issues that we want to resolve.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I will bring Article 3 to a vote. If you are in favor of appropriation for the SAU Building Maintenance Fund, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, raise your card. And the ayes have it. Motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3, moved by Darlene Mann, seconded by Mike Harris. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration on Article 3, please raise your cards. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your cards. And the ayes have it. Article 4. This is the School Buildings Maintenance Fund, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $95,000 to be added to the previously established School Buildings Expendable Maintenance Trust Fund from the Hollis School District's June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1, 2023. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends this appropriation 800. The estimated net tax impact is 5 cents a thousand. Moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. Mr. Mann.
Go ahead and advance. So this fund will behave very much like the SAU fund that you just heard about. It's used as a kind of like a savings account to carry funds forward across fiscal years for large or material building maintenance items. The funding is from the unreserved fund balance, so at the end of the year, if there's fund balance, that money will be used to fund this fund. The oversight is that major expenditures and proposals are brought up to the board by the administration. The school board will evaluate and present that plan to the budget committee, and then the school board will have final say and approval on those expenditures. You can advance. So in this particular fund, we start out with a projected opening balance of $175,000. We are proposing funding this year of $95,000 that will be used for these proposed projects at HPS, or the primary school. We have classroom and hallway flooring that will cost about $30,000. We have the Univent rebuilds at $25,000. We have exterior doors that will run approximately $15,000. And then at Hughes, or the upper elementary school, we have classroom and hallway flooring. That would be $30,000. Hot water pump will be replaced at $10,000. And then we have a transfer switch that operates the Rocky Pond pump house that supplies the schools and some other buildings in the main center of town here. That would be $10,000 as well. So those projected costs come to $120,000, which leaves a remaining fund balance for FY24 of $150,000.
Thank you, Rob. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Seeing none, I will bring Article 4 to a vote. If you are in favor of appropriating $95,000 to the School Buildings Maintenance Fund, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your card. And the ayes have it. Motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 4 by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Mann. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 4, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your card. Thank you. Restriction passes. Article 5, the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $25,000 to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. The sum to come from the Hollis School District's June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1, 2023. The school board recommends the appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends the appropriation 800. The estimated net tax impact is 1 cent a thousand. Moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. Ms. Kellner.
The Special Education Trust Fund is a tool that was established to manage unanticipated costs related to special education. These unexpected costs could result from a student who requires special education services moving into the district over the summer or a mid-year change in student placement. The school district is obligated to fund these costs, and this trust fund lessens the risk that regular education programs would be impacted by unforeseen special education costs. This trust fund was established in 2019, and the current balance is $100,000. The balance would be $125,000 if the article passes tonight.
Is there any discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, I will bring Article 5 to a vote. If you are in favor of appropriating $25,000 for the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, raise your card. And it passes. Motion to restrict Article 5 by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Mann. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration, please raise your cards. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your cards. And the ayes have it. Article 6, Contingency Fund. To see if the school district will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year for unanticipated expenses that may arise further to raise and further to raise and appropriate a sum of $95,000 to go into the fund. This sum to be raised by taxation. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends this appropriation 710. Net tax impact is 5 cents a thousand. Moved by Carol Roy, seconded by Rob Mann. Ms. Arthur.
Hi, so this article you will probably feel is familiar. We do see this one every year as well. I think one important thing to note is that the money does lapse back into the general fund if it's not used, and it is for those contingencies, unforeseen things that could happen. I think a good example is perhaps if a whole bunch of new families moved in and they all had second graders, and then that would create a bubble year that perhaps an additional teacher would need to be added to that grade. Having this contingency fund would allow the district to do that. That's about it. If you have any questions or comments, let me know.
Is there any discussion of Article 6? Mr. Butow.
Could we just get sort of a sense of what the contingency fund level has been for like the last several years?
You mean whether or not it's been spent? Because it's been $95,000 is the money that we've raised each year.
Okay.
I don't know, have we spent it in any years recently? We have not. So then the money has gone back into the general fund.
Thank you. But,
year over year.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Fontaine, Ironworks Lane. Is there a reason that this is coming out of taxation instead of the unassigned general funds, similar to some of the other trusts and things that are set up? Sorry, gonna make you work tonight.
A number of years back, it came out of the unreserved fund balance or the surplus. And then there was a year where our balance was kind of tight, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to fund it. And we were also very concerned about needing a teacher that year because enrollment was going up. So we made the transition then, knowing that this has to come before the voters every year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dave Perry, 3 West Hollis. When you state that it goes back into the general fund, does that mean it goes back to the taxpayers and it's not utilized that particular year? Is that, can
Yes.
I infer that taxpayers are the general fund?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll bring Article 6 to a vote. If you are in favor of appropriating $95,000 for the contingency fund, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your card. And the ayes have it. Motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6, moved by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Mann. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 6, please raise your cards. Thank you. If you are opposed, raise your cards. And it passes. We're down to the last one, the operating budget. To see if the school district will vote to raise an appropriate a sum of $15,786,280 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. This appropriation does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. The school board recommends this appropriation 400. The budget committee recommends this appropriation 800. The estimated net tax impact is $8.51 a thousand. Moved by Tom Guillen, seconded by Amy Kellner. Mr. Guillen.
The operating budget. Each year, we have a budget cycle process that starts back in the September-October timeframe. We work with the school board and the administration to come up with a budget that's presented to you this evening. Part of that process is to give what we call budget guidance, which is a target, more or less, for the school board to come up with. It was an iterative process this year. We initially sent guidance, and I think in our second review of the budget, we trimmed off another $200,000. And you see here that the variance from guidance came in at about $28,000 over guidance. However, as recommended, by the budget committee, we accepted that variance. First topic we'd like to cover is what are the changes in staff indicated by the budget. And you'll see here that this budget contemplates adding 6.5 full-time equivalent, or FTEs, to the budget. I can run down them. The overarching theme here is special education costs have projected to go up significantly in the coming year. First item, though, is a addition of a regular education teacher at the primary school. That's in response to anticipated increase in enrollment. Board-certified behavioral analyst assistant at the primary school. 3 paraeducators at the primary school. Again, there was a question on the HESA contract about how many openings we have. This would add 3 more in that group of paraeducators. 1 pre-K intensive need teacher at the primary school, and half an occupational therapist at Hughes. We like to highlight the major increases and major decreases. These are ranked by the absolute change in dollars as opposed to percent. Debt service is the biggest increase, $327,000. At last year's meeting, voters approved a capital improvement plan which involved bonded debt. There was a nominal payment this year, but in this coming budget that we're discussing right now, that payment comes into full effect. So you see that increase of about $328,000. The new special ed positions I just talked about on the prior page will increase the budget almost $260,000. Teacher salaries across the school district. Last year, again, one of the reasons the warrant percentage went down is because last year one of the warrants was the multi-year contract for the professional staff, for the teachers. And that budget, or excuse me, that approved expenditure is now embedded in the operating budget. So that's the cause of that increase of $262,000. Special education contracted services, and then finally health insurance often goes up, and we see it again this year at about $142,000, and transportation is expected to go up as well. Fortunately, we have some offsets. Unfortunately, they're not as large as the increases this year. Retirement benefits, that's a local contractual benefit, has decreased, expected about $64,000 decrease. Support teacher salaries, I thought we were going to rename it. This is the nurses and librarian that are covered by the professional contract, I think. So it's not classroom teachers per se. Vision services decreasing. Employer retirement contributions, we actually did get an unusual decrease there. The Hollis School District, of course, is the employer of all the teachers, and we have to make contributions to the state retirement plan. And then finally, teacher lane changes decreased. Lanes are, in the contract discussion, there was talk about the salary table. It moves 2 ways. Somebody moves down a table with seniority, and they move across the table based on educational attainment generally, either acquiring an advanced degree or substantial credit hours towards an advanced degree. So those lane changes are anticipated to be less costly this year. And that's it for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any discussion on Article 7, the operating budget?
Dave Perry again. 3 West Hollis.
Mr. Perry.
I'd like to ask either the board or the budget committee, what significant item in this budget was not approved in the discussions of this budget before it came here? Was there anything?
So we have a process where we go through 4 rounds of presenting to the school board and the budget committee. Just to give you a couple highlights, when we started out academics, we had originally requested $14,350. Ultimately, that became $6,350. That was at HPS. At Hughes, they had asked for $15,600. That became $8,100. In personnel, we requested $151,165. Ultimately, that came down to $110,973. The item that actually went up, just so you know, we originally were at $191,000 for special ed. It became $219,000 after we had fully finished the budget process on those requests. The under computer replacement, we were at $90,600, and that came down to $80,600 at HPS. The same percentage occurred at Hughes. And then there were a number of smaller items that take us to maintenance. We were originally at $481,000. That came down significantly, where we eliminated a number of items or delayed them for future because we had just repurchased a bond. So it's a 4-round process that is addressed between personnel, salaries, computers, everything.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, though I must say the numbers there were insignificant, I think, in the grand scheme of things when we looked at what's happening on the school budget here. And I have to say, when I sat here and heard 17%, that means if you have $10,000 tax on your home now, it will turn into $11,700 if my math is working correctly. And I can't believe that people didn't fall over in their chairs and go, this is unsustainable to have a 17% increase placed on taxpayers who are fighting inflation, not getting 17% increases. That there has to be a more reasonable increase. I mean, I've been here for a couple of years, and I'll tell you what, I've been stunned at the increases in the budgets that are approved every year. So I'm sure these are helpful for the students, but I'm going to be on the camp of I'm not going to support this, and I urge others to do the same. Thank you.
Ms. Opelka.
Before I ask my question, I just don't want anything misconstrued. I made my career dealing with special ed. I'm very familiar with the state and federal laws. I'm not picking on special ed. I'd like to know what is the state average percentage-wise, for special ed students, you've broken it down for the primary school and the upper elementary school. I'd like to know what the state average is.
I think they're working on it.
I think so.
I have to admire the members of the staff, of the administration and the budget committee have to be prepared for all kinds of different questions.
This is 2 questions now.
I know, but
So,
Well, they're looking that up. I just wanted to explain that there's 2 philosophies. One is to have students stay in-house for special ed services. The other is to place them out of district.
Yep.
A significant out-of-district placement is going to range between transportation and educational costs somewhere between $200,000 to $400,000 for one student out. So many of the new additional staff that we're proposing is so that we can offer in-house programming that will allow us to address multiple students.
so are you, I'm fully aware of bringing students back, and you're going to reduce that out-of-district cost, but you're also adding a number of people. So what am I going to save, or what are you going to save in doing that? That was not really my question, but it was after you had your say.
Right. Well, they're still working on looking up your number, and I'm not sure if the state's going to have that posted, so I'm not sure we're going to have that.
Well, I've been a resident of this town for over 40 years, so it has been said to me in the past what the percent has been, and these percentages are very high, in my estimation, from my experience. I just,
So you're looking for the percentages of students that have IEPs?
that are special ed or 504.
Okay.
The state average is what I was
I'm
looking
going to put
for.
the state in a comparable category as us, between 50 and 20% from pretty much districts. Are they up from years ago? Absolutely.
That was going to be another question. Not only that, I am a firm believer of early intervention, worked in early intervention. The philosophy is so you get them early, and those numbers in the upper elementary school should go down. Do you see them going down?
Well, there's 2 categories. 20 years ago, when I was in my career, a student on an IEP had a different educational need. What we're dealing with are more severely handicapped children who are within our schools that require nursing services, changing services, specialists.
Feeding services, yes.
Exactly.
I know.
So I don't see those numbers going down. I see the difference being that those numbers are being captured in district as opposed to out-of-district placements, which have grown exponentially over the last 20 years.
Do you see an increase in special ed students post-COVID? Since we all have heard about learning loss on...
I think there are more referrals to special ed teams, but I don't know if I've seen a significant uptick in those that are actually being issued an IUP. I think I might have data.
I think here comes the envelope. After that, I'd like you to finish up, please.
I'm done. I think I got my point across.
The statistics range from 12.6 to 15.5, and the last posting that is from 2019 at the DOE.
12.6 to what?
15.3.
And what grades are that?
All students. So that's the average of all students.
Pre-K through 12?
Yes.
I guess I'm really interested in, the Hollis School District grades, pre-K through 6?
Again, that statistic isn't on the DOE, so I don't have it for you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guillen.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one clarifying point following the comment about the substantial increase in the projected tax rate. One of the things I mentioned early in the tax rate portion and again in the operating budget is the increase this year is forecast to be 16%. Of that, approximately two-thirds of that is due to either decreased revenue or decreased state aid, two externalities that we can't control here. So in terms of the percent increase, 16% nominal increase, 10% of that is external to the school district, and 6% of that increase is due to decisions related to the operating budget or the warrant articles. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garuba, you got a card?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks. So my question is actually about the guidance. I think in Mr. Geehan's presentation, he pointed out that the budget came in, I think, 200,000 under guidance was what I recollect the presentation saying. But I'm questioning what the guidance number was. My experience in following the town process is the guidance this year was 0%, and I'm wondering what guidance was here at the schools.
He needs to look it up.
The budget guidance increase was 0%. So the budget can increase because there are things that we call in and outs, or out and ins more appropriately, things like debt service that are obligations that have been committed to previously that vary year by year. So what we don't want to do is permit a windfall. For example, if bonded debt, if a bond dropped off and $300,000 of debt service went away, we take that out of guidance so that it's not spent inappropriately. The same is true with increases. We saw this year, I think, a $322,000 increase in debt service due to the bond that was approved last year. We add that into guidance so that educational programs aren't penalized because of decisions the voters had made previously.
Okay, so the guidance was 0, and there was a lot of non-discretionary spending that ended up increasing the budget over guidance. So we're at 17% now, and the target was 0. And that was due to non-discretionary spending. Is there any discretionary spending in there that could have?
The tax effort increase or tax rate approximately is 16% increase. 10% of that is externalities, decrease in revenue or decrease in state aid, and 6% is due to discretionary, well, not even discretionary spending because some of that's local, like increase in tax or increase in debt burden is not discretionary. We have to pay that debt service. Right. So that 6% number is more a local number than a discretionary number. And I'd have to really sit down and analyze what's discretionary versus what is obligatory.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. St. John.
Yep, thank you. I have 3 points, so bear with me. The first point I just want to make that was pointed out that the state of New Hampshire's funding mechanism for public education is broken, and the obligations are pitted against here at the local property tax level. The state contribution, even with special education, is the bare minimum. I was attending a public hearing up in Concord for the state budget on Monday, and a gentleman came from the Kent Street Coalition to talk about Allenstown, did a
projection of what they would have to cut, and based on a 4,000 odd, and it's embarrassing. So if you have a problem with the budget, talk to the state. We are just dealing with what is being put forth against us. My second point is that I wanted to say that students with developmental disabilities deserve the same education as anyone else, and if there's an increase, we are obligated to educate any student, whether they are developmentally disabled or not. Neurodiversity, neurodiverse students, there are so many levels of that, and to say that those costs are increasing, quite frankly, I was embarrassed to hear that. Every child deserves that. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank Mr. Guillen for pointing out those obligations. And the increase sounds like it's a lot less, about 3%. And we are obligated to educate students. And that influx of students changed by year to year. And so thank you very much. I support the budget.
Ms. Brown.
Hi, Liz Brown, Williams Way in Hollis. I just rise to speak to the special education issue because I thought we got a little bit caught up in what averages are for special education. It's really difficult to really talk about special education budgets when we talk about averages because the range is so large in the special education area. Some students can be serviced with very minimal needs but still may have a 504 or an IEP, but other kids at the other end of the spectrum require extensive additional assistance. One-on-one paras, they may require additional medical assistance in the classroom. They may require a nurse that is closely available, and there may be many different people that have to work together to keep that one student in the district. So when you have one child who, really the cost may be an additional, addressing their special education costs may be very minimal, might be less than $10,000 a year, and you have another child that those costs to keep them in district may be in excess of $200,000 a year, and that's pretty typical in every district in this state. It's really difficult to talk about averages. Special education has to be looked at much more an individual. How do we service the children that actually need those services? And we don't have a choice as voters about providing those services. The children are entitled to FAPE in our public school, and under federal law, we have to provide those services. And the good news is we're not in a school district where we're seeing a lot of special education appeals where people don't feel that their needs are being met. So we're much better off to be serving these kids individually in our district at home with their peers in our community. Thank you. I support the budget.
Mr. Perry.
Yes, thank you. A question. If the budget is voted down, what happens then?
Well, we can't adjourn this meeting. We can't dissolve this meeting without a budget.
I see. Okay.
In my opinion. Now, legally, I would defer to Mr. O'Shaughnessy, but I would take a recess and I would give the Budget Committee and the school board and the administration a chance to come forward with a new number.
I see. Kind of a related question, I guess. It seems to me that the co-op meeting, that there were some potential revenue items that were not included. This is kind of a worst case budget. Can someone give me some, are there some opportunities for additional revenue that we're hoping for or think are coming that we can't include in the budget at this point? Back in the hot seat.
At the co-op budget, you were informed that there are two significant bills going through Concord right now that would change the adequacy aid formula. Okay. So this budget and everything that's been presented are as if those don't happen.
Right,
so
I understand.
Right.
Yep.
So if those were to pass or any changes are made that give us more state revenue, well, that reduces the amount we need to raise locally.
Is there any idea on what those numbers look like, or is that really something you can't share at this point, or?
I know the proposal from the governor was to increase adequacy age. I think it's 3,700 now to 4,500. That sound about right, Darlene?
That's a per student number?
House Bill 2, which is the governor's bill, increases the, puts forward a potential increase in adequacy aid per student of over $800 per student. Based on the enrollment we're looking at right now, that would be in the area of $500,000 for this district. There are potential puts and takes to other pieces of the adequacy formula. There are probably 8 different components aside from the cost per student piece. There's a funding level for special education students, a funding level that addresses students that fall short at their 3rd grade reading level. There are other elements that the state would consider, like stabilization grants that certain communities receive. And as they're looking through these potential options, they're looking for ways to mitigate the impact of those items. So my focus at the co-op was on that per student change and didn't address those other elements because they have the potential to go up and down. There are additional pieces of legislation that address adequacy aid and seek to fund it at an even greater level than that. Personally, I feel that that's even is unrealistic, and I focused on the governor's budget at that presentation. The other piece that I talked about was a 7.5% contribution from the state for employer New Hampshire retirement system. There's a bill pending that would take the 7.5% reimbursement that was issued this year and make that, which was a 1-year change, and make that a permanent solution. So that might be in this district about $65,000 or so.
Okay. Yeah, real money, yeah.
But, you know, again, and as I stipulated at the co-op, these things have to go through the entire process, but those are 2 that, you know, the government, there will be a governor's budget, there will, you know, and hopefully some of these other items that have been previously passed and addressed, you know, will continue to be, and I would urge you to, you know, look at those legislation, attend and listen to those public hearings. There is a way to provide your input online, so you don't actually have to go to Concord, and all of the public hearings.
I've only been here 2 years, but I know that already. Thank you.
And all of the public hearings are available on YouTube.
No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session. Yes,
John Fontaine, Ironworks Lane. So he asked the starting question, but the follow-on question I had for you, sir, is so you said the money wouldn't be taken out, but in reality, if we pass this budget, it's going to be taken out. It just would end up in the unassigned fund, general fund, basically? Because my understanding is, so we're going to pass this, it'll affect the taxes. You can't go back and change it because we passed it. So if we had a windfall from the state's different legislative processes and we got some more money, it would just mean that the money appropriated from the taxes would go and stay in the budget and roll over into next year as unassigned funds?
Depending on when we find out the information, the state revenue would be sent to us before the tax calculation. So that's what I mean by we would see it then. If we received an unexpected windfall after that, then yes, it just falls to the bottom of the budget.
Okay, so there's a window at which it would affect the tax rate and there's a window at which it wouldn't. Correct. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Butow.
Probably not necessary at this point, but I'd like to move the question.
Motion to end debate. It was moved by Mr. Butow, seconded by Mike Harris. This is requires a 2/3 vote. So if you're done discussing the budget, please raise your cards. Thank you. If you are opposed to ending debate, raise your cards. And the motion passes by a card vote. So now I will bring Article 7, the operating budget, to a vote at $15,786,280. If you are in favor of approving the operating budget, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, raise your card. And the ayes have it. Motion to restrict reconsideration, moved by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Mann. If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration on Article 7, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, please raise your card. And the ayes have it. Motion to dissolve the meeting by Ms. Mann, seconded by Ms. Roy. If you are in favor of ending this meeting, please raise your card. Thank you. If you are opposed, raise your card. This annual meeting of the Hollis School District is dissolved.